Good day and welcome to Nova Southeastern University. My name is Jessica Hubble. I'm an Assistant Director for the Department of Recruitment and Admissions for the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, the College of Psychology, and the Mailman Siegel Center for Human Development. Today we have the privilege of having Robert E. Seifer, Ph.D., who is a licensed psychologist specializing in athletic psychological performance enhancement. He is the team clinician for the Miami Dolphins and for 9 years was the sports psychologist for the Miami Marlins. He assisted with the creation of the Sport Neuropsychology and Performance Enhancement Clinic and implemented his POWER program for psychological performance enhancement for Olympic, professional, and collegiate athletes. In this role, he works with athletes to improve upon and maintain their elite athletic discipline. Dr. Seifer brings his POWER program to Nova Southeastern University and has been working to enhance the psychological performance of our NSU student athletes. Dr. Seifer is an associate professor in the College of Psychology for the Department of Clinical and School Psychology. He graduated from the University of Florida with a Bachelor of Science and he earned his Ph.D. in Clinical Psychology here at NSU in 2002. Without further ado, let me introduce Dr. Seifer.
The key to the POWER program is having plans and goals. We know in psychology that athletes who have plans and goals typically will achieve higher levels of performance and more success, or at least do their average more often than not. So the whole idea with the POWER program is developed is for our athletes to sit down with us to determine what their plans might be. Now, before I get into this, during my time here over the last few years, I've been able to develop the Performance Enhancement Clinic, where I'm really proud to say, working in combination with the athletic department here at Nova, as well as Henderson Counseling, that we have one practicum student this year and two practicum students next year that get a hybrid assignment where they're working both at Henderson Counseling Center and then also at Performance Enhancement Clinic in sports medicine. The idea behind this practicum that we created was to be a provider of psychological services for our student athletes, as well as mental skills and psychological performance enhancement. So we work closely with athletics, the athletic training room, the multidisciplinary team with sports medicine doctors, and we receive referrals for them where we work with their players to help with athletic performance enhancement. And then we refer to the practicum site as well for athletes that have mental health issues and need of counseling. Program's been really good. It's been really successful, and we're really proud of what we've done. So in this role as the sports psychologist and performance specialist, I meet with all the student athletes at Nova at the beginning of the year. I meet with all the teams and talk to them about who we are, what we're about, and how we can help them. We then give them a power talk, which I'm going to give you to tell you applied in application what we do. And then I develop doctoral students throughout the program through my sports psychology class, through the sports psychology club, and through the clinic and the work that we do for students to actually one day get employed, to be working in this same industry that I love, working with a professional team, being a consultant for Olympic athletes, working as a sports psychologist in a class in an NCAA Division I or II program. The idea is that the reason I'm here at Nova is to give my professional expertise to help these students become psychologists that have an interest in working with athletes, to hopefully guide them and give them skills to get jobs in the industry. And that's what we're all about. So the POWER program was developed to help athletes get plans. The whole idea is that we know that coaches sit down with their athletes all the time. They talk to them, hey, you got to have a plan. What's your goal? But what they fail to do is to break it down in psychological ways, objective, measurable, specific, and realistic goals. So what we do with our POWER program when we meet with our student athletes individually is we sit them down and we ask them to come up and create observable, measurable, specific, and realistic goals. The key of this is it has to be written down first and foremost, because if an athlete doesn't write down a goal, it doesn't go anywhere. They forget about it. When an athlete writes down a goal, she's aware of what she did and it becomes real and it stays with her. So we write down goals that are specific. We don't use nebulous goals of things that are not realistic and unachievable. For me, I'm a middle-aged man that's not a professional athlete. I don't tell my athletes to create goals that are unrealistic. An unrealistic goal for me would be, I want to dunk a basketball by the end of the year. Well, with my stature and build and my age, it is unlikely that I will ever be able to dunk a basketball, correct? But how is that different than an athlete telling me that they're going to win a gold medal at Olympics if they haven't ever even qualified to be on an Olympic team. So that's where what we do is we use realistic, achievable goals to help them with what they need to do. So we sit them down and get them to do that. What we also do is we are into time and duration because that is key. You want to be able to work backwards for what your goal is. So if that goal of that athlete, maybe it's a 10-year-old youth athlete that has this really high level goal of being an Olympic athlete and winning a medal, if they said, hey, I'm going to win that medal in 5, 6 years. Well, if it's not in a sport that it's ever possible for a 16-year-old kid to win a medal, it's not necessarily realistic. But if we say, okay, 10 years from now, if you keep on working it to become an Olympian and you work your process to get where you go, it might be possible. So what we do is we break down goals into long-term, moderate, short, and immediate, and we work backwards. So typically what we have here at NOVA, the population that we work with, are student athletes. We work with anyone from the rowing team to the basketball team to swimming, cross country, and baseball. So if an athlete tells me, I get a freshman female athlete on the swim team, and she tells me that her goal is to be all conference. That is a good goal that she should probably think about achieving and writing it down, because it probably is possible that she could do it, but we need to know what it would take possibly for her to be all conference. What were the times that she needs to do, how hard she has to work, her success rate, all of those things. And then we break it down into immediate, short, moderate, and long-term goals. So the idea would be, if we want an athlete to, by the end of her 3rd year, to win a conference championship, we probably need to make sure that she, in her immediacy, right now, that means today for the next week, immediately, here we go, I need to make sure I'm controlling the variables that I can control. And as psychologists and sports psychologists, we sit down and write down, what are those things that they control? Well, we'll get a goal that may be having to do with nutrition. We may have a goal that has to do with sleep. We may have a goal that has to do with effort. We may have a goal that has to do with focus. We may have a goal that goes with coachability. We may have any of these goals, but then what we do is we get them to specifically think about what it means to do what I need to do immediately, say, when I go to practice. So that means I need to implement the skill that coach asked me to do. It would be a nice, immediate goal that could be observable, that it's measurable, and at the end of practice, that athlete can check off whether or not she accomplished that goal. Correct? Of course. And this is the work that we do as psychologists. It's basic goal setting. You know that from being graduate students. People interested in this program that come to a doctoral program know this, because that's what psychology is. We help people set achievable goals that are realistic on a step-by-step process. And when you do that for athletes, it helps them immensely, because now they're not thinking about their long-term goal of winning a championship for the conference. They've set their immediate goal when I go into practice is, I'm going to make the correction that coach asked me to do. Or maybe another goal was to get 8 hours of sleep, which is really important. So they go home that night, they make sure that they have to wake up at 5 in the morning, they got to probably be in bed by 9 o'clock, they got to get to sleep, and when they wake up the next morning and they got their 8 hours of sleep, they got to win and they got their goal accomplished. And that's what we do with skill building and goal development. We sit them down and create immediate, short-term, moderate, and long-term goals. Different for every sport. Let's get to the next slide, please. Okay, when I work with my clients, my athletes, I ask them, do you have a routine? And hopefully they all say yes, but that is not usually the case, depending on the level of the athlete. We're talking about routines before practice. We're talking about routines before game. We're talking about routines before home games. We're talking about routines before away games. We're talking about routines when you got to travel on an airplane to get someplace all the way across the world where you're jet lagged for 16 hours. We're talking about routines of playing at night. We're talking about, do you have a routine that is thought about so that you as an athlete can go out there and perform at your average? And we know from psychology that when we develop routines for our athletes, we allow them to feel more in control, and when they feel more in control, again, they're more likely to perform at their normal ability. We want to minimize negative performance. We want to minimize stress that creates problems. We want to maximize neutral and positive expectations by controlling what we can control. And with each sport, it's specifically different. And that's whereas sports psychology and sports psychologists, what I train here is to get you to learn sport-specific ways to speak to the athletes here, sport-specific things about their routine, so that my students that are here in the doctoral program can be set up to get jobs in industry that are not so far out of the ideas of what they can do. So the second part of power goes into that. That's O for organize. We want to organize our athletes, or even me as a psychologist, or you as a student, you need to organize yourself to be ready to perform the tasks that you're going to perform. If you're a doctoral student ready to give a presentation, you probably should have studied, prepared, went over it, got good sleep, woke up, showered, eat breakfast, get dressed, leave from your house early to get to school on time, to be there, open up your computer, to get your PowerPoint ready, and then to go. That's an organized student, right? Why is that any different than organizing for our athletes? And we do the same thing. When we work with youth athletes, they lack this skill. They're just getting by on their talent. When I work with professional athletes, they've mastered this talent. When we work in the NCAA, this is where we do our work as sports psychologists, because we help these men and women organize themselves so that they can be successful in their sport. Because being a student athlete and a psychologist that wants to work with student athletes, you have to realize being a student athlete is a hard job. Hard job, because you have to be a student, you have to be an athlete, you're still a son or daughter, you're still a friend to someone else, you're probably dating and trying to be romantic, and you've got this coach that tells you what you need to do, and you got these teachers telling you what you need to do, and you got your parents in there telling you what you need to do. How do you organize then going to 5 classes in a week and making sure you show up, and when do you do your homework, and when do you eat? Well, as sports psychologists and using the power program, our second goal is to organize them so that they can achieve the goals that they set. Usually in these talks, this is where I say the money is made. This is where you do the real work. Any athlete can set up a plan or goal, to be an All-American, to be on the Olympics, to be on an NFL team. But what they fail to do is to devise the routine that's necessary every day to organize themselves to be successful, to achieve those goals. And we help with that. And when I work with Olympic level athletes, or when I work with pro athletes, the whole culture of the organization is about putting yourself in a bubble and only surrounding yourself with the people and things that you need to be able to systematically attack your process so you can achieve your goal, which typically in pro sports has to do with winning, right? They're always performing in pro sports to win. That's different than the student athlete. Student athlete likes to win, but the student athlete isn't necessarily being paid. So in pro sports, they get lost and they get stuck trying to focus on everything that's the most important, than winning. Not necessarily bad. I don't want to take that away from them, but we as psychologists need to know that. But then if that's the case, we need to make sure that this pro athlete turns their phone off when they leave their house or get to the training facility, and doesn't turn their phone back on until they leave and they're done with the day. Or when they go in for a baseball game that day at 1 o'clock and they get to the yard, they turn their phone off and they don't answer or turn their phone back on until 11 o'clock at night when the game's over. Why? So that they can focus in their bubble, and that they can focus on their sport, so that they can make their money, hone their craft, and be the best in the world. It's really hard to do. And as sports psychologists, what we do is we talk with the athletes to get them to realize that it is hard to do, but it's doable. And the first step is like talking about and processing, like the people that you love, your family members that like to get in touch with. All you got to do is, hey, let them know if you're going to work from 1 o'clock until 11 o'clock at night. You know, if it's truly an emergency, here's the phone number for my athletic trainer. Hit the trainer up, let them know you need me, but I got to go to work. It's like putting yourself in a bubble. If you want to be the best athlete in the world, you got to be in your bubble. Okay, so we help with organizing process. Mentality. Third thing I talk to my athletes about all the time. I want to know, are you going to work the process? Is your mind right? What are you thinking about? And are you ready to go? All of those are great sports psychology questions that you can ask. Moreover, the first question I always ask any athlete that walks in my office, first question I ask them, how good are you? It's a really strong, open-ended question that gets to good information that tells you a lot about an athlete, whether he or she says she's the best in the world, or he or she says, yeah, I don't know how good I am, or maybe she says, oh, I suck, or he says, yeah, I'm slumping, I'm no good, I can't handle this $100 million contract, I know I'm good, but I'm not living up to it. All of that is wonderful information for psychologists, right, to get to understand what it is in their head, because then what we do with this power program, it's just our entry into working with the athlete. When we give a power talk, we do power with them, we start to do this, It's an entry to get to understand the psychology, because what we want to do is help this person perform better. This program is all about performance enhancement. So what we're trying to do is get them to be aware of their mind. And with the next slide, we're going to go to work process, and go to the next one real quick, and then winning mentality. But let's go back to work process if we can. So working process of power means, is the athlete able to systematically work her approach that she decided to do for her sport? If her approach for that day, remember the woman who wants to be champion of her conference, if her goal for that day was to listen to coaching and to make proper mechanical adjustments to her stroke that coach wanted her to do, and that she was going to trust that, could she measure that she was doing that? Could she measure that she wasn't doing that? Yes to both of those. Thank you. So the idea is that she then, in the middle of the practice, stops being receptive to coaching. When she stops in the middle of practice and coaching and throws away the rest of practice, did she accomplish her goal? No. I've got students in the room, they're actually watching, so I'm getting some good nonverbals for those of you that are listening, which is great. So the idea is that she chose, or it just so happened that she stopped working her process, which then limited and impaired her ability to achieve her goal, which then caused her to throw away her practice, correct? So was this athlete working process? For a little bit she was, but she wasn't the whole time. So what we need to do is we get them to learn how to walk the walk. In pro sports, in a locker room I was working in before, we talked about trusting the process, not just developing the process, but trusting it. So if I have an approach for an at-bat and I'm looking for fastballs middle away before there's 2 strikes, and I start swinging at breaking balls, like, I didn't work the process. I came up with a plan of what I was supposed to do, but yet I didn't execute it because I didn't trust the process. I forgot about it. Or if I'm a football player and I'm supposed to read the defense and I'm the quarterback right before, and I'm supposed to call an audible when I see this man defense. Well, I didn't work my process to do the check down, and then I throw an interception because I didn't change our offensive play. The reason it happened was a mental error, because the athlete doesn't work process. We spend a lot of time getting athletes to refine and work process and to ultimately trust that process. The other part of the W is where it's the easiest for sports psychologists and psychology doctoral students to get, because it's based in the idea of cognitive psychology. And cognitive psychology tells us that the way that we think about ourselves in our head is going to have a large effect on how we perform in life, how we perform in sport. For goodness sakes, we know that if a depressed client is in our office, we know that he or she is probably having negative thoughts about her past experiences, right? She's probably having negative thoughts about where she is in her moment right now, and she's probably having negative thoughts about future, correct? So if we know that, and we know through cognitive psychology that we could do cognitive interventions to change that, to treat that, we can do the exact same thing with our athletes. So say I have an Olympic level athlete that is getting ready to go and compete in Worlds to get to qualify for the Olympic team. And that athlete says to me, when I ask, how good of an athlete are you? He says, no, I suck. If he maintains that mentality, even if he is the top athlete in the world, even if he is one of the best in the country, is he going to perform well and do well? Not at all. No chance, say we say in baseball. No chance. Because he's already used his negativity to negatively affect him. So the reality is that what we're going to do is put interventions in place to actually get them to change the way that they think. Very easy for psychology students, very effective for athletes. Not the most sophisticated approach to working with people, but Socratic questioning, cognitive restructuring really works well. Just when we work with athletes, we don't tell them what we're doing. We're just trying to challenge the way they think and get them to change. Because if I have a top athlete who is supposed to qualify for the Olympics and is the best athlete in the United States, shouldn't that athlete have at least a neutral or positive mentality? Or should that athlete have a negative mentality? Like, I don't need any of my athletes. I used to think this like 9 years ago when I first started out working pro teams. I used to think I need you to have, let's effing go. I got this. I'm the baddest man around, and I'm going to get this done. Or I got this. I'm going to score 20 points tonight, and no one can stop me. I don't need that anymore because I've been around a lot now. I just need my athletes to be neutral. Neutral or positive is what I like. And neutral just means like, hey, I've performed in the past. I've trained really well. I've collected a bunch of wins during training, and I trust my process that I created. And now it's a chance for an opportunity, and I'm just going to do my thing. It's kind of neutral, a little bit positive. Instead of saying, yeah, I'm going to run through the wall and I'm going to qualify as the #1 person in the world. Like, I don't need that anymore. What I want is at least a neutral mentality, because a lot of athletes that we're going to work with, it's so hard for them to get to. Moreover, the work we do at Nova students, we have a large percentage of international students that are athletes here. And what I've learned through my time working with international student athletes is, first off, they're not as positive as American athletes. They're not trained to think in a positive, optimistic way. So a lot of these athletes have actually a negative mentality. And sometimes I don't even take that away from them anymore because it worked for them if they need to gripe or get it off their chest. But what we need to do as sports psychologists is realize how that mentality affects performance. And if it's no longer working, we tweak it, right? Using psychological techniques. Then we get into getting ready to get them ready. Like at some point, you're going to work with athletes. And the best part of being a sports psychologist for me, after teaching, of course, I love teaching. That's why I came back to help you all develop. It's a passion of mine. But the most fun part for me is when I get embedded with the team. And embedded with the team means I'm actually there at the field that day for a baseball team. Or I'm at practice at an NFL camp and I'm talking to a player minutes before they're going on the field. Or I'm working with the United States sailing team and we're actually in a foreign country and we're about to compete for our country. And you say, hey, how's your mind? You ready to go? What's your effort going to be today? How's it going to be? And then you train them for weeks and weeks and weeks, and now we're at the battle, and you say to your athlete, you got this. I know you do. Let's tell me what you're going to do right now. And that's what we're doing. We are trying to get our athletes to be in control of how they want to perform with their effort. And it can be as simple as an exercise for anyone listening to this right now. There might be 10 more minutes left in my talk. I challenge you to see if you can put your effort to a maximum to pay attention and be locked in for my talk for the next 10 minutes. And if you're able to do it at the end, give yourself a plus. You just got your win for the day. And if you get a negative, you weren't able to achieve your goal and you can't control your effort yet. And then you'll need to come to me for help. So let's go to the next slide when we talk about effort. I measure effort on, I'll use a clinical term, on a SUD scale. SUD scale is subjective units of distress. We use it all the time for pain tolerance. I use it for effort. I believe that an athlete or a non-athlete, a normal person is able to say, I'm going to this class for an hour and a half, and I'm going to be controlling my effort level of what I do for paying attention. And then before I have class, I'm going to hold myself accountable to whatever number I choose. I just like using 0 to 10. I'm telling the truth. I don't go to meetings every time and say, I'm going to be a 10. Yeah, let's go. That's not who I am. But when I choose to be a 10, I promise you that I will be a 10 for the entire time because I have mental toughness and I also am able to control my effort level and hold myself accountable at the end. And I like my athletes to do that. There was one spring training where I was working with a bunch of the guys and I was talking about this whole process, team talk, and talking about going up to guys and say, hey, what's your effort going to be today for BP or for early work, 0 to 10. And lo and behold, it turned out this one leader guy on the team started making fun of me, making fun of Seifer. That's what they do. It's cool. And they're making jokes before games. Hey, what's your effort going to be today? What's your effort going to be today? What's your effort going to be today? Well, it turns out that that joke caught on and they talked about it a lot. And that team actually ended up winning the championship for their division, not because of the fact of me giving them an intervention at all. The team was loaded with a lot of talent. But I think that that joke actually in some way also turned into them being able to say, I'm going to hold my teammate accountable today. What are you going to be today when you're on the field with me? Where are you going to be? And the more you can do that, the more you can get more output and you get more camaraderie and you can probably get more performance. And the athletes that you're going to work with one day, we know that athletes, high-end athletes, are super neurotic. They're compulsive, they're organized, and they're anxious. So the idea is that we get them not focusing on the outcome of winning, and we get them into a controllable, I can maintain my effort for 60 minutes today at practice. I can do whatever coach asks me to do, and I know I can do it on a 10, and I'll turn it off when I'm done. Our athletes can do that. And if they're managing their effort and they're in control of their effort, and when they achieve their effort, they then most likely will have a really good practice, right? And if they then do it in a game or sport, they control that, they probably will get an outcome they want. So through controlling their effort of how they're thinking, they're able to get to different places in athletic achievement. The other flip side of that is what we do in this is we work on relaxation. You know that there's that curve where too much anxiety or stress makes you bad, Too little, you're not as good either. So you need to get that sweet spot of how emotional you are versus how calm you are. So a lot of the times with our student athletes or professional athletes or private amateur athletes is we're going to do relaxation training a lot. We're going to do a lot of behavioral techniques so that they can learn or become more mindful of what they're doing and their approach to calm themselves down for people that need to be calmed down. There's also times where we might need to work with someone to get their level of energy up and to get them more excited. So we work on all these things. We use different things like visualization can have an effect as well. All right. At the end of the day, the R in power is all about responsibility. And I think this will be the last slide that I show.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, the R in responsibility is an existential tenet. I'm an existential psychologist. I like existential beliefs, meaning that you have to find some meaning in your life, because if you don't, it becomes meaningless. You have to be around people that support you, that love you, that you feel connected with. And if you don't do that, you're going to be all alone and isolated. You're born alone, you die alone. That's a bad outcome. You got to realize that our lives are finite, time limited, meaning that we're all going to die. So instead of focusing on the negative, that means I got to really be my best right now if I'm choosing to be my best, right? And at the end of the day, whatever choice I make, however I live my life, my athletes and the people I work with need to take the responsibility for their lives, for their careers, for whatever they choose. So for someone listening to this talk right now and thinking about power, how it applies to you to get into a doctoral program, that is a realistic, observable, measurable, specific goal that you could get into a doctoral program within a period of time. The reality also is that it's also on you if you don't, because you have to make choices and decisions on a daily basis to study to get good grades, to study for the GRE, to get a high GRE, to work long hours with professors on research, to volunteer at different places. You're making choices every day to get to the level of a doctoral student. And then when you're a doctoral student, you have to make choices every day and take responsibility for your career, because no one's going to give anything to you here. You're only going to get what you put in and how hard you work. We're not going to give it to you. So at the end of the day, wherever you go with your academic career, it's a parallel process. Yes, parallel process, therapy term, to the athletes. We are not Dr. Feelgood, everything's going to be all right and it's going to work out for you. No, you go out and you go drinking and you got drunk and you made a choice to do that. You just lost 3 days of training. You lost your ability to be there for your team, and it's probably going to have an effect on your performance. Same as a student athlete having exams and she stays up till 4 in the morning studying and has to go to swim practice at 5:30. She just gave away a whole practice because she had to study, but yet she wants to be the conference champion, which is the same choice as someone who actually is crushing a whole pint of ice cream before a competition. It's just as bad a decision because it's going to have a negative athletic effect on you. So I don't care if it's drinking or going out or studying or eating. It's like, hey, be real. Are you living the life that you were trying to live and doing the things that you need to do to get where you need to go? So as a sports psychologist, and I think that this is why I'm successful, and hopefully it works well with doctoral students as well, I'm big on telling people, put work in. It's your responsibility where you want to go. It's your responsibility to get that internship or that practicum or that job. And you'll get it if you work. And that's what we tell our athletes. We don't say, hey, yeah, you're going to be an Olympian one day. To a 10-year-old, it's going to work out. Yeah, no worries. You got this. Dr. Feelgood, I got you. Or like that Olympic athlete that still can't get out of his mind that he can't believe he's the best in the world and he still thinks, oh, I'm really not that good. Well, how's that working for you? Because you're probably not going to qualify for even being the best athlete out of a USA, let alone get to the Olympics. So we talk about, are you doing what you were supposed to do to get to where you want to go? And in the end, if you get this whole power talk, you realize that it's a systematic approach to life, whether you're an athlete or a well person, because we need plans and goals, immediate, short, moderate, long-term goals. Shoot, I have long-term goals that I'm still hunting. I have immediate goals that I'm still hunting. And stuff happens and it disrupts me, but I get right back in there and I organize my process to get right back on track to make sure I'm going to get to my long-term goal, whatever it is. It might just be being a good dad. Maybe that's the only goal that matters to me. Who knows? But then I believe in it and I work that process regularly to be that person, to believe in myself and have neutral and positive expectations that I can do that. And then I'm going to control my effort. And I'm going to actually say, when I'm here, I'm going to be locked in. And when I'm away, I'm not. Same as athletes. And at the end of the day, I take responsibility to be the best person who I am. The best version of me might not make you like me. The best version of my athlete may make that athlete not be liked by teammates. Because sometimes you're at a program where people don't care about athletic performance. And you working your routine and believing in yourself and holding people accountable is a negative thing on some teams because they just want to hang out and do whatever. So here in the end, power program, opportunity for people interested to come in and to work with me and to learn and to take these courses and to get opportunities and to present these to our student athletes. Coming to Nova, interested in sports psych is rare. Coming to Nova and interested in being a good psychologist and hearing about sports psych happens more often because you realize it could be a piece of your practice one day. I never tell any doctoral student that comes in here, yes, be like Dr. Seifer, be a sports psychologist, you're going to make $500,000 a year, and all you're going to do is work for pro teams. That could happen in 20 years. That's a realistic 20-year goal. But your first year out, that's a low likelihood. So why not grab $50,000 contract with a college team and then work your process as a psychologist in a hospital or a group practice and then build it out. So that's typically what happens when students come in here. They want to work with me and they hear about what we're doing because it's cool, it's fun, it's exciting, right? We like this. So if you want to work with athletes and you want to help them perform better and you want to help be part of the team, sports psychology is definitely the way to go. And hopefully this power presentation was helpful to you all. Does anyone have any questions?
Does anybody have any questions? Honestly, you completely changed my mood. What about you guys? Yeah? I mean, earlier today, I was going through so much, and then just listening to that really changed my perspective and how I should deal with things, right? Does anybody have any questions about how you control that? I know you guys are learning a lot about that in your classes, so. Awesome job.
Well, I think that the one thing that you mentioned is good is that the power of the mind for healthy, normal population of people or also clinical people, it's the same idea that you can change how you feel by changing the way you think and experience the world through the lens that you see it. Sports psychology, yes, there is a mental health component sometimes that we're working with people with diagnosis and we're treating that, but the majority of the work that I do, 80%, is working with mentally healthy people and having them refine themselves to have that experience, like you said, where you feel more energy, you feel more locked in, you feel motivated.
Absolutely, yeah. I want to go home and do my discussion for the week.
But then if you do that, you got to set a time and a goal for it and when you're going to do it and how often you're going to be. And then believe you're going to get it done because you can get any of this done. You had a question, Beth?
I guess my question is, what got you into sports psychology and what would you say to people aspiring to do that as well?
Yeah, that's a good question because when I came to Nova in '97 as a doctoral student, I never thought I'd be doing what it is that I'm doing now. And that also includes being a professor. I always thought that I'm second generation psychologist like other people as well, but I always thought I was going to be running a big group practice. And, things just happen along the way in grad school. And fortunately, it worked out to being a professor and also working with athletes in sports psychology. And I think the reality of why I work with athletes and how it happened is my personality. I don't like sitting in an office 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. I like being part of teams. I'm an athlete myself. I know I'm competitive. I like being around competitive people. And it just worked out that I was blessed with an opportunity with Major League Baseball in 2008 to be an evaluator for them. And it turned into this career that allowed me to work in, for the University of Miami for 5 years, for the Marlins for 9 years, for the Dolphins now, and Nova, and then private clients, and travel the world with teams. And it's fantastic. But I never, when I was coming into a doctoral program, ever imagined that this would be a career that I would be in. And I think it's a career that people aren't really aware of either. Because, psychology is changing, and what does it mean to be a clinical psychologist, and how do you get jobs, and who do you help? But the world is changing in pro sports and college sports, where here at Nova, there's a mental health initiative where my clinic and we work and screen every student athlete here for depression, anxiety, and make referrals for people that have higher levels of that to get them help. So I see the future for you all to be able to get jobs at Division I and Division II and even Division III schools, to be able to go to private schools and be a sports psychologist, to get jobs with pro teams in the years ahead, to run programs and develop it. It's definitely possible. You just gotta have a goal to do it. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Thought it was actually interesting at the end you had mentioned, you have to be realistic, right? And I actually had spoken to somebody that had a degree in sports, and they were thinking that they can just go into pro football or whatever. And I was like, how long have you been doing this? Because he actually worked for Home Depot for 10 years, not doing anything that remotely was in his goal.
Right.
And I said, well, have you looked at Optimist? The cities have football teams and baseball teams. I mean, you could start there, work your way to high school, you become and he's like, I never thought of it.
Right.
How do you not think of that?
Well, that's why we help with performance enhancement.
Right.
The end goal is great. It'd be great for all these students in the room to get a contract with a pro sports team. It's possible. For real, I did it. I'm no different than you. You can do this. However, you have to take free reps. You have to get good at public speaking. You have to get good at talking to front office people. You got to get good talking to people who are different than you. You got to be okay with being around high-level athletes. You have to be comfortable with yourself. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And you have to work your way up slowly to get to those jobs, which are achievable. And that's about that goal setting. Like, you all should have a goal that to get a pro contract 10 years from now, that's realistic. But if you haven't done one thing, not going to happen. Anything's achievable if you have the plan and you have the talent to do it. I'm not that special. You all can do the exact same thing, and it's a wonderful industry.
Anybody else have any other questions? No? All right, perfect.
Well, thank you all for your time. And if you want to contact me, you're more than welcome to shoot me an email at seiferro@nova.edu.
Yes, and we do have our faculty website on our College of Psychology webpage with the NSU. And majority of, actually all of our professors are really open to speak to other students or even potential students. And the Department of Recruitment and Admissions is definitely here for you. Our website is right, our email is right there, gradschool@nova.edu. And if you are interested in any of our future events, please go to nsu.edu/DRA, that's for the Department of Recruitment and Admissions, /events. Thank you, Dr. Seifer. Thank you, everyone that came. Have a wonderful night.